All right, so for those who just joined in, I want to let you know what we're working on real quick. So the past couple of days, we've been working on some watermelon-themed glass, which you could see some of these examples on the front pedestal right here. And these are eventually going into the Museum of Glass store just out in the Grand Hall, so you will be able to see them up close and in person at some point in the future. These were actually designed by one of our Museum of Glass staff team members. There's a sort of challenge where people were able to submit drawings and have the chance for them to be turned into glass. And so this was one of those designs that was chosen. And they are getting started on a watermelon pitcher right now, like a water pitcher. I would say that the pitchers in the Museum of Glass store are pretty well sellers, so we will see them work on a prototype of this pitcher. It's going to have the same color scheme, of course, with the pink main body, the black seeds inside of that pink, and then a green rim, or green accents in general. We'll see how they create this. And after we create this prototype for this watermelon pitcher, I believe we are going to be moving on to making some other kinds of pitchers for the Museum of Glass store as well. So that is what we're working on today. You guys are welcome to take a seat and watch us blow glass. All right. And welcome to those who just joined in. Today we're working on a couple of different projects, but it seems like so far we are going to be working on mostly pitchers today, like a water pitcher. And the first thing that we're starting with is we are making a watermelon themed pitcher. These are items that are going to go into the store at some point soon. And this is just our very first watermelon pitcher, so this is technically a prototype as well. And right now it's really hot, so you can't quite see the colors, but we have that same color scheme as our other pieces. The area of the glass that's connected to the pipe is the pink section of our glass, and we already have these little black dots for the watermelon seeds. And then this area that they're working on now, they've just attached, and this is the green section, the watermelon rind. And something that's interesting to note that I was just telling someone in the audience is that the different colors are actually moving a little bit differently from each other in this case. So the green is a little bit softer than the pink. And so they're having to control that a little bit, making sure it doesn't blow out too far or move differently from the pink, so they still have a nice uniform shape. And it looks like we are pretty much just finishing off the main body at the center bench. And over on the left bench, Nick is most likely getting started on the handle for the water pitcher. And it looks like the type of color that we're using over there is something called frit, which are basically these shards of colored glass. So he's taken just regular clear molten glass and rolled it inside of those shards of color to pick them up. And I want to point out that as this glass is cooling down, we can see the true color of it a lot better. So you can start to see that green right now. And it looks like they are finished the shape of the body, so they're just going to keep this warm at around 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. If it drops below that temperature, we do risk thermal shock. So we're just going in and out of the furnace every once in a while. This is called flashing, just keeping it warm. Yes, so we've just brought over a small bubble of color. It's kind of hard to see through that color itself, but this is a hollow piece of glass that they're attaching right now. This is attached to the lower part of the body first. They'll stretch it up before cutting it off of that pipe and then twisting it, attaching it to the rest of the body. And just to make sure that connection is secure, sometimes they'll go in with a small handheld torch and just go over that second connection briefly. And once we have the handle shape down, then all we need to do is create the spout on that opposite side, and then we have our water pitcher complete. Now, while the handle is still hot, Gabe is able to go in and do a little bit of shaping. He's actually using a little copper tube. And it's looking like the handle itself is also green. So this is matching the rim or the opening of the pitcher. So to create the spout, we're going in with this small handheld torch again. This is just going to focus heat to that really small area that we need to edit. And once this is hot enough, Gabe, all he has to do is go in with a pair of tweezers and push the lip outward. And this is going to create our spout. And to get ready to break this piece off and put it away, you'll usually see them torching the area where the glass is connected to the pipe, just like they are right now, until you start to see a little bit of movement. And at that point, they then apply some water, and that is going to crack a small connecting point between the pipe and the piece itself. And then all they need to do is tap the pipe, and that is going to create a vibration that travels to those small cracks. And these are Kevlar gloves that Sayuri has on. These are going to protect her from the glass. She's going to pick it up and put it away with their own hands. So this is where they apply that water. Once again, this is just cracking that small connecting point just at the end of the pipe. And next they tap the pipe. And they're going to briefly go in with a small torch and heat up the bottom. This is getting rid of any leftover sharp ends that remain after breaking it off. And this is also where they would stamp the Museum of Glass logo on the bottom if it is a store item, which today we are making store items. And finally, this is going into the annealer, this large black box over on our wall. This is going to slowly cool this piece of glass down at least overnight. So we're not going to see it again until tomorrow, but this is going to prevent thermal shock. And let's give them a round of applause for their first piece of the day. That was our very first item. And once again, that was just our very first watermelon pitcher. That was a sort of prototype, and it's kind of going along with the theme that we've been working on for the past couple of days. And next, I've heard that we're going to be working on some other types of pitchers for the Museum of Glass store as well. So if you guys missed the beginning of the process where we get the color and where we start to blow the glass out in general, then we are about to get started on the next piece. Yes, so once again, we're going to be moving on to a different design now. It's seeming like we're going to be using some pretty similar coloring techniques as last time, though. We will usually start with something called color bar, which I actually have a physical example right here. This is preheated to about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and then we'll pick it up on the end of a pipe and heat it up until it's completely molten. The different colors come from different metal oxides that are mixed into the kind of basic glass mixture itself, which is a soda lime glass. I know, so much information all at the same time. But the glass mixture itself is mostly silica sand, a little bit of soda ash, a little bit of limestone. And then for colors, we get them shipped in that bar form and simply apply them to the glass. So for those who just joined in, I want to point out that we are actually working on some water pictures for the Museum of Glass store, which is just out in the Grand Hall. And we are just starting this project, so you're seeing the very beginning of this process. We actually just created a small clear bubble over here. That's what was happening at the table. That was just a single layer of clear glass on the end of the pipe. And next we blew a bubble. That's happening over on the left bench. And at the same time, Nick is inside of our furnace, and this is melting down a piece of colored glass on the end of the pipe. This is eventually going to be literally dropped on top of that small clear bubble. They'll hold the bubble upright and then drop the color on top. And I want to point out that this process of coloring the glass in this way, this is called a color drop or a color overlay. And this is a very commonly used way to color glass. I want to point out a couple of examples. In the front, we have these watermelon-themed pieces of glass. These are eventually going into the store as well. And the color overlay gives us a really smooth, even layer of color across the entire piece, just like these right here, versus something like frit, which are these shards of colored glass. You can see that this has a more speckled pattern in the color inside of this glass. It might be a little bit hard to see, but you can almost kind of see a little bit of warping from those little bits of glass being attached on the outside. And I want to start you off with a little bit of an overview of the hot shop as well, just in case you haven't been in one before. So first off, over on the left side, you can see that Nick is inside of this large tank with a closed door. This is our glass furnace. It holds up to 1,000 pounds of clear molten glass. It's just a pool of molten glass inside of this tank, just to kind of give you an idea, sitting inside of a giant ceramic tank. And it is staying at a very steady 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit. And it actually runs 24/7, so that furnace is always working. And all of these other furnaces we have, these are for reheating the glass only. They run between 21 and 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, by the way, Nick loves to use up leftover color to make these really nice sculpted horses. So he's sculpting a horse right now at the center bench, if you're wondering what he's doing. And this is just using up that leftover bit of color that they just dropped on top of that clear bubble. And he uses the very last bit of glass to create the tail. And this is broken off inside of the garage, which I want to point out, this silver box right here. Anything that we put or keep inside of this box is staying at around 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, which if the glass drops below that temperature, it can actually break from thermal shock. So this is just going to keep that horse warm and possibly allow it to cool down slow enough that it doesn't break. And over on that left bench, we've gathered another layer of clear over top of our color that we applied. And I want to point out this new tool that we're using. This is the block, this wooden spoon-shaped tool, and this is going to smooth and even out this fresh layer of clear, making sure that the bubble blows out evenly from inside. And the bigger the piece, the more layers of clear you'll see them gather for each piece, because it is mostly just building up some mass. But since we are making water pitchers today, these actually don't require very much glass compared to other pieces. They make them pretty thin. By the way, just to point out, this is the staff member, Sophie, that designed the watermelon pieces of glass. It was a sort of challenge that we had going on a while back where the Museum of Glass staff were allowed to submit a drawing, and a couple of people got chosen. So once again, we're going in for another layer of clear over top of what we already have. So if you haven't seen them use this furnace already, once again, this is where we're getting all of our clear layers of glass. And this is specifically a strip gather. They're letting some of that clear strip or fall off of the end of the pipe. And this is just giving them a partial layer of that clear glass, just a little bit less than they would usually get. And this is a good time to mention, if anyone has any questions, you could feel free to just raise your hand and I'll come right over to answer those questions. Yes, so this is something I like to mention every now and then. I've just got a question relating to it. So if you guys are curious, we actually live stream every single day that the museum is open like this on our YouTube channel and on the Museum of Glass website. So if you guys wanted to check in and look back on certain days, like you weren't able to see the final product, then you can go back a couple days. I think that they keep every single live stream. I don't think any of them have ever been deleted. You can also look up when we have visiting artists coming in, and you can just kind of watch as they create something completely different than what you see this time. So each person's glass journey or story is different, of course, but these guys that you see working on the hot shop floor, they usually have about 20 to 30 years of glassblowing experience. Today we have two main hot shop team members, one part-time, and then we have Sophie, who she works upstairs. She doesn't work with the glass herself, but yeah, these guys are very professional glass blowers. They create their own artwork as well as helping visiting artists create their artwork or even just creating items for the store like they are today. And they've all gotten into glass blowing in various ways. Some of them knew people who blew glass. Some of them randomly decided to take like a college class that had glass blowing. Some of them can go to specific glass blowing schools. There's Pilchuck, which is a glass art school about 2 hours north of us. And I know myself personally, as well as some other people, have gone through a program that's local out here called Hilltop Artists that allows kids 12 and up to blow glass, which I was telling one of the audience members in the front. Yeah, you have to be about 12 to start blowing glass. So the torch that we've been using, I like to call this one a fluffy flame. This one runs around the same temperature as the furnaces themselves, between 21 and 2300 degrees Fahrenheit. But the torch will heat up a section of glass at a time instead of heating up the entire thing inside of the furnace. So we can focus heat to just one area and work on that one area a little bit more. And we have other types of torches as well. You'll see us use one other kind later on, but we do mainly use this one large fluffy flame. Now, at this point, we are starting to flatten the bottom of our pitcher. So we're using the newspapers, that's what this pad is right here, to keep squeezing in the side of the piece a little bit. And as you can see, this is pushing the glass in and creating a waste in the glass. At the same time, they were pushing that paddle onto the bottom, which was flattening the bottom, just creating a place for the glass to sit evenly on a flat surface, such as a table. So yes, once again, all this pad is right here is just folded up newspaper. And as you just saw, we'll splash it or soak it with water in between uses. And this just stops that paper from burning too far. Honestly, the water destroys it more than the glass touching it destroys it. It kind of can get a little gooey at a certain point. And once they've flattened the bottom, what they're going to do next is they're actually going to bring over another pipe with a clear bit of glass on the end. And this is going to be attached to the center of the bottom of the piece, allowing them to completely break this piece off of the pipe that it's on right now. So as you can see, we're not really editing this glass anymore. We're letting it cool down just in the room temperature air. And Gabe is taking a broken piece of glass, just marking the center of the bottom real quick. This is just giving himself a target to hit when they bring over that second pipe. Oh, and actually, it looks like they've brought over a bit of clear. This is going to be attached before they attach that second pipe. This is just creating a pad of clear glass on the bottom. This is usually done when the bottom is a little bit thin. So this building does have a little bit of history behind it. The shape of it is based off of these old wood burners that used to be along this waterway right here. They were called wigwam or beehive burners. And this is very similar in shape and looks to those burners. So it's just kind of paying tribute to what this area used to be and what it used to be used for, which was logging. And when they made the museum, they really cleaned up the area. They created the bridge of glass, they created the museum of glass. One more thing I want to point out about the building itself is you can see the cone is tilted on its side. And I kind of like to show off why they do that. It just gives us more floor space. If you hold your arms in the cone shape and then tilt one of those arms, you can see that that gives us just so much more floor space. So, yeah. And it looks like we've just attached the punty to the bottom of our piece. Once again, the punty is just a second pipe that they'll attach to the piece so that they can go ahead and break the piece off of its original pipe. And to break a piece off, you'll see this again later on, but we just apply some water, and this is cracking those small sections of the glass that it touches, and then they tap the pipe, creating a vibration that travels to those cracks, cleanly breaking that off. And once again, now that we've broken that piece off of its original pipe, we have access to the top of our piece. This is going to allow us to start opening it up, flaring it out as wide as we want it to be. You can see we've applied quite a bit of heat just around the opening of the piece. This is the only section that we want to alter right now. And this is actually some glass that they're going to cut off right here. Whenever we break a piece off of the pipe, that connecting area that was just previously connected to the pipe is usually a little bit thicker. The break isn't always perfectly even, so this is going to get rid of those imperfections. And one more level of detail that's going to be attached to this is I believe we're actually going to be adding a lip wrap to this piece. And a lip wrap is basically just a rim of a different color just around the opening of a piece. So they're not going to open this very far. They're going to leave it a little bit of a smaller opening, bring over that bit of color, wrap it around the opening, and then they can further alter it from there. So now that bit of color has just been brought over. This is lightly touched down on the lip. As they turn, it's going to follow all the way around. And it's looking like this lip wrap is actually a white glass. Salmon glass, I stand corrected. And just to make sure that this opening is smoothed back out, sometimes they'll press a wooden paddle against the opening, and that's just pushing that glass down any areas that are too high. And now they could start to flare this open as wide as they want. And another important step for a pitcher is the handle for the pitcher. So that is what Nick is starting on over on the left bench right now. And I just want to point out we've attached the handle to the side of our pitcher. And this is specifically a blown glass bubble that has been attached to the side, so we can't see through it, but it is hollow, which means that the piece is going to be a little bit lighter overall, and it's going to have better balance instead of just having a hefty, solid glass handle on the side. And now to create the spout, we're just applying some heat to the lip only on the opposite side of the handle. And all Gabe has to do is go in with a pair of tweezers and push that lip out. This is going to create a small spout. And from here, this piece is pretty much done. They probably won't be altering or changing the shape of this very much. I believe they're just going to get ready to break this piece off. This is going to include torching the area where the glass is connected to the pipe. And once this is nice and warm, they'll be able to see it move a little bit. And at that point, they'll apply water to break it off, just like they did earlier. And by the way, I do want to point out once again that these pieces that they're making all day today are going into the Museum of Glass store eventually. So maybe in a couple of days from now, or once they have a larger amount of them, they'll go on the shelves in the store. And once they apply that water, all they have to do is break that piece off. They're going to torch the bottom to get rid of leftover sharp ends and also stamp it with the Museum of Glass logo. These Kevlar gloves, these are protecting Sayuri from the heat that's coming off of the glass. You could still feel the heat inside of those gloves, so you do want to be relatively quick about it. And now that that is finished, this is going inside of our annealer, this large black box, along with our pitcher that we made earlier. And let's give them a round of applause for finishing that pitcher as well. Thank you. So that was our second piece done today. And I want to point out, I know that you guys saw the whole process, so I know a lot of you will probably be leaving, but we do have some brand new pieces on display up on the far end of the hot shop over there. These are made by a pretty famous glass artist named Lino, so I recommend checking those out on your way out. And we're just going to continue to work on pitchers throughout the day. These are a really good seller in the Museum of Glass store. So whenever we have time, we'll usually try to make some. And up on the screen, you can see that Gabe is drawing with a little bit of chalk on the floor. They're just going through some different designs, seeing what shape they want to make for their next picture. And welcome to everyone who's just joined us in the hot shop. Today we are working on some water pitchers for the Museum of Glass store. And we are going with a variety of different designs and colors each time. These are a little bit more of prototypes, kind of practice and making a variety of them. Usually when we make things for the store, we try to make sets of them. So we would consider this more of prototyping. And it's looking like we're going to be using some yellows this time. You can see we have a small metal dish laid out over on the left bench. And inside of that dish, we have shards of colored glass. This is called frit. This is one way that we color glass. Another way that we color glass is by using color bar, which is a solid piece of color. And this is something that's a little bit more common. It gives us a really smooth, even layer of color across the entire piece. And by the way, just to point out, the different colors in glass come from different metal oxides that are mixed into a more basic glass mixture. And the glass mixture that we use in this hot shop is specifically a soda lime glass. So there's a little bit of soda ash limestone inside of this glass mixture. And speaking of this glass mixture, in the back you could see that we have this large tank with this closed door. This is where we hold all of our clear molten glass. It holds up to 1,000 pounds and it stays at a very steady 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit. All of our other furnaces, they run between 21 and 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit, so just a little bit warmer. And I want to point out that we start on the side benches, but we usually move over to the center bench once we're ready to completely blow out our piece and finish it off. So we're going to be applying the color over on the left bench, but we're going to be finishing the pitcher at the center bench. Yes, and no worries, wherever you're sitting in the hot shop is perfectly fine because we do have cameras that follow around everything that we're doing. And so over on the left bench, we're just applying our color right now. And this is usually done on the side benches, but once we have all the glass we need, we move it over to the center bench and fully blow out and make our piece. And so right now, we're about to see a process called a color drop or color overlay. And this is actually using a piece of color bar, which is that solid piece of color that I was holding up and showing off earlier. They melted it down completely and then dropped it on top of a small clear bubble, just like you saw up on the screen. And this is going to be kind of rolled and pushed back until it completely covers up that clear bubble. And this is going to create a really smooth, even layer of color across the entire piece. And it looks like you guys get a special little show as well. At the center bench, Nick has taken the extra little bit of color that was attached to the end of his pipe. He's gathered a single layer of clear over top of it, and he's now going to use that excess glass to sculpt a little horse. So once again, this is just using up that leftover color. And Nick has definitely created many of these horses. This is one of his special little things he does for the audience. And could we actually have a shot of that horse as he's sculpting it, please? We could focus back on the main project in a moment. It's just really satisfying to watch. And just like that, that little horse is done. And these are usually set aside in the garage, which is this big silver box here, just to slowly cool down. If we want it to properly cool down, then sometimes we'll put it inside of the large black box that we're using over on the right wall. So we'll see where it goes. And now focusing back over on the left bench, we have actually finished pushing and kind of rolling that color back. It's completely covering up that clear bubble now. At this point, we're just letting it cool down a little bit. We're not heating it up. We're not working with it anymore. Once it cools down enough, we're going to go ahead and gather another layer of clear over top of it. And this is just building up some mass for the piece. Most of our pieces, even if they look like they're completely colored glass, they are still usually mostly made from clear glass. And if you were to look at that cross section, you'd be able to see a thin layer of color, but it's sandwiched between multiple layers of clear. So once again, we've gathered that layer of clear already. We've probably expanded the bubble a little bit at this point, and we've let it cool down enough that we're able to gather one more layer of clear. And this layer is a strip gather. So once again, when we just want a partial layer of that clear, just a smaller amount of glass, then sometimes we'll let some of that glass fall right off the end of the pipe. And this is when we move over to the center bench because this is all the glass we need for this project. So now all we have to do is start blowing it out and turning it into a pitcher. And each time before we blow or expand that bubble, we always go in with the block, which is that wooden spoon-shaped tool you saw them using a couple of times now. And this is just smoothing and evening out that fresh layer of glass on the very outside, making sure that the bubble blows out evenly from inside. And this is pretty easy to miss, so I do want to point out that this pipe is kind of like a straw. It's hollow all the way through, so all we do is we blow into the end of the pipe. That air travels through and expands that glass like a balloon. So Nick is over on the end of the pipe and expanding this glass. And right now, Gabe is using a pad. This is actually just folded up newspaper. That is all this material is right here. And so many different things are being introduced right now, but this torch, if I didn't mention already, it runs around the same temperature as the furnaces themselves, between 21 and 2300 degrees Fahrenheit. But the torch will heat up a section of glass at a time instead of heating up the entire thing all at once inside of the furnace. And next we're going in with a pair of jacks, these two metal blades, and creating a jack line. The jack line is just this divot that's forming underneath those blades, and this is where we break the piece off of the pipe later on. And sometimes you'll see us change the angle of the pipe. Most commonly, we will hang the glass towards the floor to stretch it out and create a little bit of a longer, narrower shape. So we're using gravity as a tool to shape the glass, basically. And next, Gabe is going in with the jacks again, but this time he's actually just holding the blades on the side of the bubble. And this is making sure that when they are blowing or even just holding the glass in that same position, this is kind of conforming the glass to the shape of the blades, just giving them a nice straight wall. So if we were making a small cylinder or a cup, then this is the same exact thing that they would do. And at this point, we've just focused the heat on the very bottom of the bubble. And this is going to allow them to start flattening the bottom of the piece, just giving the piece a nice place to rest when we set it on a flat surface such as a table. And to make sure that the bottom of this piece is staying in this really nice crisp 90-degree angle, they're pushing from two sides at the same time, the jack's on the side of the bubble and the paddle on the bottom. And this has kind of forced it into that nice crisp corner. If we were to just push it from one direction, it would want to push out the other direction. And now that we've flattened the bottom, we're not going to be editing or altering this piece of glass anymore until we've attached a second pipe to the center of the bottom of the piece. So we're just going to keep this warm. And over on the left, Nick is preparing a pipe with just a little clear attachment on the end. This is going to be attached, once again, to the very center of the bottom of our piece. So now that second pipe is brought over, attached to the bottom. And once that connection is secure, to break this piece off of its original pipe, all we do is we apply some water. That water is going to crack that section of the glass from thermal shock, that extreme temperature change. And once that section of the glass is cracked, it's pretty easy to break it off. All they need to do is tap the pipe. And now from here, as you can see, we've basically flipped the orientation of the piece. So now we have access to the top side of the pitcher. We can start to open it up, flare it out. We can do pretty much whatever we want with the top half. And I just want to mention again, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to just raise your hand and let me know. And next we're going in with a pair of tweezers. We are actually pulling more than we are pinching right now. And all of this glass that we pinched is just going to be cut off with a pair of shears, kind of like glass scissors. So this is all just excess glass that we're cutting off. Whenever we break a piece away from its original pipe, that connecting area is usually a little bit too thick, so we need to get rid of some excess glass. And it looks like while they are working on the main body of the piece at the center bench here, over on the left they're preparing a small bit of colored glass, and I believe this is a yellow glass. This is going to be brought over and then wrapped around just the opening of the piece to create a rim of yellow. So we've just brought over that bit of color. This is lightly touched down on the lip, and then as they turn, this is following all the way around. Once again, this is just creating a rim of a separate color just around the opening of the piece. And now to smooth out this new glass they just added, they're going to be pressing a wooden paddle just against the opening of the piece, while also going on the inside with the jacks, those two metal blades. And then very quickly, right afterwards, they go in with the Soffietta, this cone-shaped tool. The cone will block off the opening to the piece, allowing them to blow a little bit more air in. And once again, the reason that they're using the Soffietta, as you can see when they're using it, this is expanding just the very top of the piece. It's expanding the walls, creating a little bit of a rounder, wider shape. We did have a little bit of almost a taper earlier, so they were getting rid of that. And now that they've blown that out a little bit more, Gabe is able to go in with the pair of jacks and fully open it up. And to make sure that that is staying nice and straight, Gabe is going in with a pair, actually just a stack of newspapers. And of course, since this is a pitcher, we need to create the handle. So that's being created over on the left bench right now. I'm assuming it's going to be the same color as the lip wrap, so probably a yellow handle attached to the side of the piece. So once again, to create the handle for our pitcher, they bring over that bit of yellow glass. Actually, this is a hollow piece of glass right here. This is a blown yellow bubble. This is attached to the lower half of our piece first, and then all they do is they twist it and attach it to the upper half of our piece. And just to make sure that second connection is really secure, they go ahead and heat it up just a little bit extra with that little flame. And welcome to everyone who just joined us in the hot shop. I want to catch you up on what we're working on today. So today we have our Museum of Glass Hot Shop team. These guys work here pretty much full time as Museum of Glass Hot Shop employees. And today we are making some items for the Museum of Glass store. What we're specifically working on is water pitchers, which you can see this one is pretty much almost finished. The only thing that we need to add now is the spout for the water to come out on the opposite side of the handle. And to create that, we're going in with this really hot focused flame and heating up just that small section of the lip. And then all Gabe is going to do is go inside of the piece and push that lip outward. And that is it. That is going to pretty much finish our water pitcher off. And now at this point, we're just getting ready to break the piece off and put it away. And to do this, we just heat up that connecting area where the glass is connected to the pipe until we start to see a little bit of movement. Then we apply water to crack that small section of the glass, which some of you guys remember we did that earlier. And this is going to allow us to just completely break the piece off and put it away. So once again, applying that water. And once they have all the water they need, they just tap the pipe. This is going to be broken off into these Kevlar gloves, which are going to hold the piece steady while they torch the bottom. And after they've torched the bottom, they simply stamp it with the Museum of Glass logo for the store, and that piece is done. So let's give them a round of applause for finishing that pitcher. Thank you. All right, so this is going into the annealer. If you haven't seen this box yet already, anything that we put inside of this box is kept probably at around 950 degrees Fahrenheit. And then with the press of a button, everything inside of there cools down all at once. This process is usually overnight. The thicker the glass, the longer we have to cool it down to make sure it doesn't break from thermal shock. But we're definitely not going to see that piece until tomorrow. And I know you guys didn't get to see the beginning of the process, but we are about to start a new pitcher pretty soon here. You'll be able to see how we got the color, how we even started the glass bubble in the first place. And for those who are just stepping out, I just want to point out, if you haven't checked it out already, we have some pieces that were just put up on display up in the back of the hot shop, so I recommend checking those out for sure. All right, and for those who have just joined in, I haven't even given you a hot shop overview yet, so I want to point out a couple of machinery, and I want to point out the temperatures of them. So first off, you're going to see us use our clear glass furnace, which is this large tank with a closed door in the back of the hot shop. We're specifically using this one on the left today, which is why I'm pointing to that one, but there is the one on the right as well. We do have two. And these hold up to 1,000 pounds of clear molten glass each at around 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit, 24/7. So that glass is always at that temperature, always ready for us to use. All of our other furnaces, they run between 21 and 2,300 degrees Fahrenheit, so just a little bit warmer to reheat the glass faster. And we actually turn these off when we're done using them, turn them back on maybe an hour or so before we start again. And today we do have two of the reheating furnaces on. I always get questions about the differences between those furnaces. And really there isn't a significant difference between the two. I mean, the one at the center bench is a little bit larger, but for the most part, we just have multiple furnaces on at the same time to be able to work at multiple benches at the same time. And we're using multiple kinds of colors today. Up on the screen, we have a view of the left bench, and you can see this little metal bowl. And inside of this bowl, we have something called frit. It's just F-R-I-T. And these are little shards of colored glass. We take our clear molten glass and we roll them inside of those shards to pick them up. And you can see that Nick is working with a bit of glass right now as well. This is actually something completely different. This is something called color bar, and it mostly starts off in a shape just like what I'm holding right here. It's just a solid piece of colored glass through and through. So that is going to be used for the base of the piece. Basically, the whole body is going to be that one color. That really smooth, even layer of color is coming from the color bar. And then the frit, those shards of color, those are going to be used to kind of accent things, such as creating a little rim of color, kind of like these cups on the front pedestal. Now, over on that left bench, you can see that small bit of clear that we gathered has been turned into a small clear bubble. And next, we bring over that molten piece of color bar, drop it directly on top. And this is cut off. And next, we're just going to go through the process of spreading and kind of pushing this back to completely cover up that clear. This is going to create, once again, something called a color drop or color overlay. It's going to give us a really smooth, even layer of color across the entire piece. Now, the center bench, Nick is actually using the bit of leftover color that was used over on the left bench to sculpt a horse. This one is a little bit larger than the previous ones that were made today. And this is something that we don't get to see super often, but Nick has created many of these horses before, so he's really good at them. And up on the screen, we have a really good view of this horse sculpture, by the way. So for anyone that doesn't have a good view of the center bench. And after finishing that horse, I want to point out that it was placed inside of the garage, which is this large silver box right here. Anything that we place inside of or keep inside of this box is going to stay at around 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's going to prevent that horse from breaking from thermal shock. And over on that left bench, you can see that we've gathered a layer of clear over top of that color we applied. And we're in the process of kind of smoothing, evening that new layer of glass out. After this is smooth, we'll expand the bubble a little bit from inside by blowing into the end of the pipe. And we still need more glass than what we have right now even, so we're going to let this layer cool down and then gather another layer of clear over top of that as well. And it's kind of hard to describe the colors for this piece, but I've been told that the color that's on the bubble right now, this is a sort of pinkish orange color, maybe leaning a little bit more towards pink. And we are going to be adding some accents of just pure opaque orange later on as well for the handle and for the rim of the glass. And by the way, for those who just joined in, I just want to point out we are working on some water pitchers today. So this is going to turn out as a water pitcher as well. And each one of these that we're making today so far has been completely different from the last one. And so these are more so prototypes, but we may see them go into the Museum of Glass store eventually. Yes, so this is called a strip gather. We gathered a layer of clear and then we allowed some of it to fall or strip off of the bubble. It's just giving us a partial layer of clear instead of a full layer of clear, getting us closer to the exact size we want. And now that we have all the glass we need, we move over to the center bench where we can start to fully blow this out and turn it into our water pitcher. And I know it keeps saying picture up on the screen, but once again, I am talking about a water pitcher, like something that is used to pour liquid. Now, every now and then, the heat will start to get a little bit too much on the pipe where we're handling it, so we're using a pipe cooler over on the right side of the hot shop. We're just setting the pipe inside of a trough of water, and it's cooling it down almost instantly. And after heating that glass up one more time, we're coming back. Gabe is using the block, once again, this wooden spoon shaped tool, if you haven't seen it already, smoothing and evening this fresh layer of glass out. And this is kind of cooling down the very outside of the bubble as well, making sure that the bubble blows out evenly from inside. And next, he goes in with a stack of newspapers. That's all this pad is in his hand, is just folded up newspaper. We'll soak it or splash it with water before using, but that's it. And this is going to basically tell the bubble which way to blow out. So the area he's applying the newspapers to, the bubble will not blow out in that direction. And you guys remember me talking about the furnaces a little bit earlier? Well, this torch runs around the same temperature as the furnaces, between 21 and 2300 degrees Fahrenheit. But the torch will heat up a section of glass at a time instead of heating up the entire thing inside of the furnace all at once. So we can focus heat to just one area of the piece. And next we're going in with a pair of jacks, these two metal blades. And this line that we're creating, this is where we're going to break this piece off of the pipe later on. This is called the jack line. And each time we're hanging the glass down towards the floor, this is stretching this glass out using gravity as a tool. And we also did a little bit of swinging there as well. This is just further stretching that glass out by creating a little bit of centrifugal force, which is actually the outward pulling force from spinning. So now we have quite a long shape for our glass. This is something that we would do for vases, cups, cylinders, anything that has to have that longer shape. And right here, it's a little bit hard to tell, but we've focused a lot more heat just at the very bottom of the bubble instead of heating up the entire bubble overall. So this is going to allow us to just alter the bottom of the bubble only as we stay on the side of the piece with the jacks, those two metal blades, and push on the bottom with the wooden paddle. This is forcing that glass into this nice, crisp, kind of 90-degree angle on the very bottom. If we were to just push without keeping the jacks on the side, it would kind of balloon out to the side a little bit. So to get that 90-degree angle, we have to come in with two tools at the same time. And if they're happy with how the bottom of this piece is shaped, then next they're just going to let this area cool down a little bit while making sure that the rest of the glass is staying at around 1000 degrees Fahrenheit. And then they're going to actually attach a second pipe to the center of the bottom of our piece and then go ahead and break this piece off of the pipe that it's on right now. So to do this, Nick is taking a second pipe. This is just a completely solid pipe. We're not going to be blowing into this. And we're gathering a single layer of clear on the end. So we've just brought over that second pipe, attached it to the center of the bottom of our piece. And to break this piece off, if you didn't see already, we just apply a little bit of water to the area we want to break, and that's going to change the temperature so extremely, so quickly, that it's going to create thermal shock. So this is cracking this small section of glass. All we do is tap the pipe, and that breaks that piece cleanly off. And as you saw, this is basically flipped the orientation of the piece. So now we have access to the top of our pitcher. We can start to open it up, flare it out if we wish to do so. And I briefly mentioned earlier, but we are going to be adding some other details to this piece as well. So we have a little metal bowl or dish of orange glass over here. And this is just shards of colored glass. This is called frit, sitting inside of that bowl. So we take a bit of clear molten glass and we roll it inside of the frit to pick it up. And that's going to create a speckled layer of color on the very outside of that clear. We'll do this multiple times just to make sure we have enough color, kind of a concentrated color for what we're doing at the center bench. So the center bench, I was a little bit distracted, but we used a pair of tweezers. We pinched and pulled the glass away from the opening of the piece, and this was stretching out the very top of the piece, kind of thinning that area of the glass out. And then we took a pair of shears and cut some of that excess glass off, and that's where we're at right now. We've just lightly heated up the front of the piece again, and this is just all in preparation for adding this bit of orange color that's been worked on over on the left bench. So that bit of color is brought over to the center bench. This is lightly touched down on the lip of the piece or the opening of the piece, and then as they turn, it follows all the way around, creating a separate rim of a different color. I should just say a rim of a different color. So I just want to point out this technique is called a lip wrap. And to reinflate this glass a little bit, we're going in with the Sophietta, this little cone-shaped tool. That cone will block off the opening to the piece, allowing them to blow some more air in. And this is basically just reinflated at the very top, the opening, kind of the shoulder of this piece. And from here, we should be able to just fully open this up and give it these nice straight walls, kind of like a cylinder. And another thing we're working on, while we finish the shape of the body at the center bench, over on the left bench, we're making the handle for this pitcher. And this is usually a small bubble of glass that is blown. In this case, we're adding some of that same color that we used for the opening of the piece, which is an orange this time. And the center bench, it looks like they've pretty much finished making this perfect cylinder shape. And once they have that shape that they want, they're just going to keep it warm. They're not going to alter the shape anymore, so we're just going to go into the furnace for very brief amounts of time. This is called flashing, just making sure the glass is staying at around 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. And next, Nick quickly comes over with that blown bubble of color. And this is brought over attached to the lower half of the piece first, and then stretched up before being attached to the upper half of our piece. Once again, this is just creating the handle for our pitcher. And this is the same color that they used just around the opening of the piece. Just to make sure that this connection is secure, sometimes they'll go in with that little handheld torch like they did there and heat up that connection point again. And once again, to create the lip or the spout for this pitcher, all we're doing is we're heating up a small section of the lip and then pushing it outward. And that is enough to finish this piece off. From here, they're just going to make sure that it's ready to break off the pipe. They're going to go in with that large fluffy flame and they're going to start torching the area where the glass is connected to the pipe until they start to see a little bit of movement in there. And then they'll break it off just like they did earlier, where they apply some water to crack that small section of the glass and then just fully break this piece off to put away. So once again, we're applying that water, cracking that connecting area, tapping the pipe. This is going to be held upside down in these Kevlar gloves where they're going to then torch the bottom. And torching the bottom is going to do a couple things. It's going to get rid of any leftover sharp ends that remain. It's also going to allow them to stamp the bottom with the Museum of Glass logo. And once again, these are Museum of Glass store items, so you guys might be able to see these on our store shelves pretty soon here. Next, this is going into the annealer, where you can see all of our previous pictures in there as well. This is going to slowly cool this piece of glass down at least overnight so it doesn't break from thermal shock. So we're not going to see this piece until at least tomorrow. And we still have plenty of time, so we will see them start on their next picture pretty soon. Once again, we're going with different colors and shapes each time for these pictures. So far, we've seen some, kind of like a coral color, a yellow, an orange. We've seen some blues and greens. And I want to point out once again that we have these pieces that were just very recently put up on display up in the back of the hot shop. I really recommend checking those out. Those are by a pretty famous glass artist. His name is Lino. All right, so just to catch up anyone that's recently joined, once again today we are working on water pitchers. And you can see a few of them drawn on the ground, honestly, up on the screen. So far we've been sticking with the shape on the right of the screen. We've been making a lot of pitchers that are this really straight-walled cylinder shape. And it looks like we have all the glass we need after this layer of clear has been applied right here. So we'll move over to the center bench where we can start to blow this out and turn it into that pitcher. Now, all the different pitchers we've been making today are more so prototypes. We're working with a ton of different colors and even different shapes. So just getting a little bit of practice in and testing out different shapes to see what looks best. And if you're wondering what they were doing over on the right side of the hot shop, they were using a pipe cooler. This is a trough of water that we set the pipe into. Sometimes that heat starts to travel towards the artist's hands a little bit more. In that case, we will cool it down. And right now we're heating up the entire piece of glass on the end of this pipe to the point of the pipe itself starting to glow. You'll see when we come out. And this is meaning that the entire bubble is all going to be pretty much completely molten. We'll go in with our block again, which is that wooden spoon-shaped tool. This is going to cool down the very outside of the bubble, making sure that the bubble blows out evenly from within. So this is a really important step in the process, just making sure that bubble blows out evenly. And next, Gabe is going in with a pair of jacks. These are the most important tools when it comes to glass blowing. Most important tool, not plural. These two metal blades, these are carving a jack line into the glass at the moment. The jack line is where we break the piece off of the pipe later on. And this is always done a little bit earlier on in the process before they completely finish the shape. And to guide which way the bubble is blowing out, Gabe is going in with those newspapers. So that pad that he was using, all it is just folded up newspaper. We'll soak it or splash it with water before using. And whenever we hang the glass down towards the floor, this is us usually stretching that glass out. You can see how much that shape is changing and how quickly. And sometimes we'll stretch it out even faster by swinging it or even doing a full 360-degree spin. And this is creating centrifugal force, the outward pulling force from spinning to further pull that glass out. And this is getting us closer to a cylinder shape. So if we're making something like a vase or a cup or a cylinder, we want a taller, longer shape like we have right now. So this is something that you would see in those cases as well. And using the newspapers to continue guiding the bubble in the directions that Gabe wants it to blow out. He's kept them along the side of the bubble, creating these straight, smooth walls. Now at this point, Gabe is keeping his jacks, those two metal blades, once again on the side of the bubble. This is making sure that the bubble is conforming to that shape, just giving us really straight, even walls. At the same time, we've also started to push a wooden paddle onto the bottom of the piece. And this is starting to flatten it out, just giving us a flat bottom so that the piece will rest evenly on a table. At this point, we've heated up only the bottom of the piece. So now when they go in with the jacks and the wooden paddle at the same time, this is really forced and pushed that glass into a nice crisp corner. If we were to just push the paddle on the bottom, the glass would start to kind of balloon out towards the sides. So we have to kind of force it into that geometric shape. And since we have the bottom complete now, all we have to do is take a second pipe with a little bit of clear on the end. We'll bring it over, attach it to the center of the bottom of the piece, and then completely break this piece off of the pipe that it's on right now. This is going to give us access to the other side of the piece, so this is a really important step in the process as well. And even up on the screen, you can see that the bottom of the piece is still radiating light. It's still glowing a little bit, which means that it's still pretty warm. They want to let that cool down before they attach that pipe to the bottom. Otherwise, they could push the bottom in a little bit on accident and get a sort of indentation in the bottom. So just so many small details that they're always paying attention to and being careful of as they're making these pieces. And now they've just brought over that punty. The punty is the second pipe, that clear attachment on the end. And once again, this is attached to the center at the bottom of the piece. Once that connection is secure, they go ahead and apply some water to the jack line, which you remember is this divot near our original pipe. This is cracking the glass from thermal shock. Then we tap the pipe, and that breaks that piece cleanly off. And we'll see this happen again later on down the line when we're breaking the piece off to completely put it away. But usually this is done kind of in the middle of the process where we flip the orientation of the piece so we have access to the other side. At the center bench, we've just taken a pair of tweezers and pinched and pulled the opening out and away. And all of this glass that was pinched and pulled out is all cut off. This is all just excess. I always like to try to explain whenever they break the piece off of its original pipe, the one that we were blowing it on, that connecting area where it was attached to the pipe is a little bit thick, and the break to get it off of that pipe isn't always perfectly even. So this is going to get rid of those unevenness and the thickness that remains. And now that we've cut that excess glass off, we're just going to keep the opening small for now while we prepare the bit of color over on the left bench. That'll be brought over and then wrapped around the opening of the piece to create something called a lip wrap. It's just a rim of a different color around the very opening of a piece. And yes, once again, for those who just joined, today we are working on making a variety of different water pitchers. Right now, this one that we're working on seems to be a bluish color for the main body. And we've just brought over a small bit of color and wrapped it around the very opening. Once again, this is called a lip wrap. And this same technique is done for many different pieces. So if you see any piece with a rim of a separate color, this is most likely how they got that. And at this point, after we added that bit of color around the opening, we have fully opened it up into the size that we want, which is just this perfect straight-walled cylinder. So we're going to leave it this shape as we get the handle ready to attach to the side of the piece as well. That handle is already being prepared over on the left bench. This is going to be the same color as the lip wrap to make sure that we have those two colors or kind of accents bringing each other out in a way. And whenever we make a handle for a pitcher, it usually is a bubble of glass actually. So the handle is hollow. And this is going to make the piece a little bit lighter overall and better balanced instead of just having a solid, heavy glass handle on the side of the piece. And it's kind of hard to tell what the colors are when they're really hot like this. But this really light color that they've been adding to the piece is actually a sort of salmon color. It's like this really light pinkish, whitish, orangish color. And that's the color that they're using for the lip wrap, which we already have, and for the handle, which they're going to bring over very shortly here. So that handle is brought over. This is attached to the lower half of our piece first, and then brought up and attached to the upper half. This first connection that they made, where they first placed the bubble on the side of the piece, is a really hot, kind of molten connection. But this second connection is a little bit weaker, so they go in and they torch it just to make sure that it's extra stuck on. And once we have the handle and we've shaped it out to exactly what we want it to be, the only step we'll have left is creating the spout on the opposite side of the handle. And that is a pretty quick process of creating the spout. All they do is they heat up the opposite side of the lip using this small handheld torch. And then once that opposite side of the lip is warm enough, all they do is they go inside the piece with a pair of tweezers and just push the lip out. So that's what we're going to see next when they come out of the furnace. By the way, I get questions every now and then, why are they going into the furnace and then using these torches? So the torches will heat up sections of glass at a time instead of heating up the entire thing overall inside of the furnace. So we could focus some extra heat to areas that are a little bit too cold. We want to make sure everything is staying at around 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. If it drops below that temperature, then we do risk thermal shock. And now to break this piece off, just like earlier, we apply a little bit of water to that connecting area, which is cracking that connecting point. Then all we should have to do is tap the pipe. That'll break the piece off into these Kevlar gloves. And I also want to point out, now that this piece of glass is cooling down a little bit, you can start to see that salmon color a lot better now, that sort of pinkish orangish. And now this piece is done, so this is going inside of the annealer to cool down with the rest of the pitchers we've made today as well. This is an overnight process at the least. Sometimes the thicker the glass, the longer it takes to cool down properly. And apparently that is lunch. So if anyone has any final questions for me before we get going out of here, then feel free to ask away. And if you guys are all good, then we will be back in about an hour from now, probably at around 2 p.m. And then we'll continue to blow glass for the rest of the day until the museum closes.